not that it makes any difference right now, but does it qualify as a war crime in the long term?
I would say so, yeah. According to the Geneva Conventions, attacking civilians in that manner is a war crime. Not only is it a war crime, but it's the biggest ecological disaster we've seen since Chernobyl. It's the biggest ecological disaster of this century. You already see oil spills into this agricultural territory. It's massive. It's cynical, and
But first, thousands are leaving their homes after floods caused by a breach in a dam in Russian occupied Ukraine. Ukrainian authorities stepped up evacuation efforts from inundated communities along the Dnipro River under fierce Russian shelling as floodwaters from the dam breach blamed on Moscow continue to rise. The UN aid chief has warned of grave and far reaching consequences for people in southern Ukraine as both sides continue to blame each other and a nuclear site comes under threat because of the cooling effects of the dams or the rivers, tides, should I say. Joining me is Stash Luczkiw, features editor at Kyiv Post. Thank you very much for coming on the program. First of all, Stash, can you just give me the latest from the region? Because we're hearing that, although the dam is a big enough disaster to be discussing, there's now this attachment of the nuclear facility, I think 60 kilometers upriver from it.
yeah, well, we spoke at the Kyiv Post. We spoke to Victoria Wojcicka, and she used to be part of the government that oversaw nuclear power plants. And she says there's ample water for a long time, about a month, to cool the station. So we're okay for about a month. But the problem is going to come later because everything around the nuclear power plant is mined. So for now, it seems we're safe, but we have to keep an eye on it. And of course, there's going to be a counteroffensive right around that area, and which is underway as of yesterday.
And I presume, the issues of, well, I mean, I don't know how fixable the dam is, but I presume not in the immediate future and certainly not within
It's
a month.
completely destroyed.
Uh,
Ukrainian
completely
Ukrainian
just.
officials have said it's completely destroyed.
And that has a huge impact on farming as well, which of course is Ukraine's lifeblood in many ways. But how much more complicated is the situation made by the fact that this is Russian occupied Ukrainian territory? So there's no vested interest in the Russians really fixing anything. In fact,
They
they're
won't.
very likely
This
to be
is
the ones who
scorched.
caused it. Yeah.
This is scorched earth policy on the part of the Russians. The entire southern part of Ukraine will be affected agriculturally. Both sides of the river, Russian controlled and Ukrainian controlled river, are flooded. On the Russian controlled side, they're probably withdrawing some of their troops. Some of their troops actually got caught up in the floods. And they're just trying to buy time to prevent the counteroffensive. They don't want the Ukrainians to cross the river or make it, or slow them down so that they
Mm.
can move troops to where the major offensive is taking place, which is in the Zaporizhia region and also in the Donetsk region.
I mean, we've heard a lot about the Ukrainian counteroffensive. What is it?
Well, it's probably going to be taking place on various points all along the front line, from the north all the way in Russian territory, where the Ukrainians are probably backing Russian proxies, anti-Putin proxies, to take some villages and create a buffer zone all the way in the north and all the way down to the mouth of the Dnipro, where Ukrainians will still probably launch amphibious attacks in, into exactly the flooded regions near the Crimean Peninsula.
Mm.
So it'll be many points. It won't be just one push. It'll probably be many pushes. But right now they're probing to see where the weak points are in the Russian fortifications.
Is there any comfort to be taken from the fact that if the Russians are now fully embracing a scorched earth policy, then it suggests that they're not very hopeful of capturing this territory in the long term?
Well, they're just trying to buy time. They're hoping they can hold off the Ukrainians until such time as Europe and the United States gets tired of the war, and possibly that less supportive government will take power in the United States, i.e., Trump.
Mm. And what's the feeling in Ukraine? I mean, is there fear of that, or is the actual
Absolute
war going
defiance.
on more
I'm in Kyiv right
preoccupying?
now. It's defiance. Everyone's horrified by what the Russians did, but nobody is surprised. This is what they've done historically. Scorched earth policy goes back to prehistory in this part of the world. So nobody's surprised, everyone's defiant, and it just makes people more determined to kick the Russians out as quickly as possible.
Stuart, you probably don't know the answer to this, but how long did it take to build that dam? I mean, just to get a sense of the scale of the
Years.
infrastructure that's been destroyed.
Oh, it's massive. It was started in the 50s. I think it was begun in 1951, if I'm not mistaken, and it probably took several years to build. It was part of a whole series of infrastructure projects in the post-war years. And in order to, there are several dams all along the Dnipro, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's the biggest one. It holds a reservoir that, for anyone who's familiar with America, is the size of the Salt Lake in Utah.
Wow,
Those are the
huge.
comparisons I've heard, but it's massive. It's huge, and now it's spilling out into the floodplain toward the mouth of the Dnipro.
Just finally, I mean, not that it makes any difference right now, but does it qualify as a war crime in the long term?
I would say so, yeah. They're according to the Geneva Conventions, attacking civilians in that manner is a war crime. Not only is it a war crime, but it's the biggest ecological disaster we've seen since Chernobyl. It's the biggest ecological disaster of this century. You already see oil spills into this agricultural territory. It's massive. It's cynical, and it won't work.
Well, thank you very much for displaying that defiant spirit to be found in Ukraine. Stash Luczkiw, features editor at Kyiv Post. Thank you very much for joining me. We'll talk to you again soon, no doubt.